the 2022 Wasco County Distinguished Young Woman and the 2022 Oregon Distinguished Young Woman representing Oregon in the national competition. We are proud of you and the way you represent the city of the Dalles and Wasco County. On behalf of the City Council and the citizens of the Dalles, please accept our congratulations. Everybody in the picture. You also have a medallion once you get that in the picture.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
If you own a business, Dalles, you know something who does, I would encourage all of you to consider donating to next year's council program. All the women who participate in the scholarship really deserve them and will make a great impact in their communities wherever they go. I would encourage all of you to consider that as a part of your participation and your own community.
I think you should have been also honored for public speaking. That was very nice. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Izetta, for all the work you did on this. Okay, 5B, strategic plan from Q Life. We have with us Lee Weinstein, president of Q Life, and Carrie Rasmussen from Pippenich. Carrie, it's another Carrie I know. Sorry about that. Please proceed. Apologize for the last name.
It's all good. All good. Thank you all for having us here tonight, the invitation to present. There's a lot going on with broadband here in Wasco County, as well as in our surrounding counties, which Carrie can talk about with McKed. But we wanted to give you a quick update on where we are and what to expect and what we're working on, because we're going to need all of your help and support. And I would just underscore that one of the great things about the Dalles, obviously, is we work quickly and we work nimbly, and with the county as well. So we want to really be ready for what's coming down the pike. So to begin, reminder of what Q Life is. Q Life has been around since 2002, and it's a collaborative effort between public entities here in the Dalles and Wasco County, who created the 17-mile fiber optic loop through the city. Our goal then and continues to be to enhance the region's economic development efforts with reliable, cost-effective open access link using the Bonneville Power Administration's fiber, which runs through the Dalles. And we have a number of board members here, two that are on council here today with Scott and Rod. Scott Heggie, my predecessor as chair, thank you for the nomination, Scott, is on the line, as well as John Emery, who's helping us staff. But in addition, you can see that Dale Lepper's on our board. And we meet regularly, have a meeting this Thursday. What have we been working on? To begin, we worked on a new strategic plan, which we adopted about a year ago. And I want to call out for you, I'm not going to read all of this for you, and you had it in your packet, but our vision is that every address in Wasco County can enjoy a higher quality of life and participate in education, healthcare, and the economy through high-speed internet and a connection at a price they can afford. And ideally, that speed is 100 Mbps symmetrical. And I would underscore that we want to make sure this is affordable and we get to as many addresses as we possibly can using fiber. Our mission is to facilitate access to scalable telecommunication infrastructure to enable affordable broadband internet across Wasco County, much like a public utility. So think about us as like a water district or a sewer or the United States Postal Service. We want to be there and be accessible to the public. And you can read our values at end. We have our 5 strategic goals. I'm not going to enumerate all of those, but right now we're continuing to build the system, which started here in downtown. It's expanded to Maupin, where things are definitely hopping. It's working really well. They have that, when we announced that, originally, they had the second fastest internet in the state of Oregon. So who knew that about Maupin, but really very cool what happened. So strategic plan, you've got, and I want to call out, you know, if you back up and look at our two PUDs here, electric PUDs, you know, and look at their history and where they came from, you know, particularly with the Wasco Electric Co-op, you know, it really was formed during the rural electrification movement of the 1930s. And Scott Heggie came up with this term. I don't know if anybody else has used this in the nation, but we're entering the era of rural broadbandification. So it's a good made up word from Commissioner Heggie. But, you know, if you look at what we did to make electric access available to people throughout the county and affordable, we're trying to do the same thing. How are we doing that? We've been working to date with state and local funds, but now with the passage of the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which passed about a year and a half or so ago, I believe, there's $65 billion to expand broadband access and affordability. And we want to be ready for that. So that's the strategic plan and what we're working on, and the parties and our new BAT that Harry will define for you in a second. We want to be nimble. We want to work in partnerships. There are a number of providers here and ISPs here. We want to be sustainable. We want to be affordable, redundant, and resilient. So with that, I'm going to hand this to Harry.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about our broadband action team, which if you skim through the slides in advance, you'll notice that it was one of the actions that were identified as part of that strategic planning process. We brought a group of stakeholders together to provide input to Q-Life in terms of where it wanted to go, you know, where the community wanted to see Q-Life go and how they could impact our communities across the county. And forming a broadband action team was one of the next steps that was identified. So last fall, we all started talking a little bit about what that might look like in Wasco County and where it might look at focusing its efforts to start with. And in early 2022, we had our first meeting, I believe in February. We had a really great group of stakeholders. I think the power of a broadband action team is that it's really a group of stakeholders and community members coming together, thinking about how to collaborate and take action to improve broadband access in the county. And, you know, I think thinking really critically about not just access, but in our communities that do have that access, you know, the end goal isn't the access, it's what you can do with it. It's how you can access educational services, healthcare, governmental services, all of the things that we all need to do on a daily basis. And making sure that our communities have those tools and know how to do that, I think, is a long-term goal as well. And I think the hope is that BAT will continue to collaborate on really defining what those needs are and identify some of those next steps to get there. The other piece that we're really looking at critically is how, as Lee noted, with $65 billion of federal funding coming down through a variety of channels over the next 5 years, how we can make sure that Wasco County gets the investment it needs to have connectivity in not just, you know, the surrounding areas of the Dalles and South County throughout, to really make sure that our communities have access to what is today basic infrastructure. So where we're starting is at the basics. We've got a broadband speed survey out into the community right now, really trying to identify very clearly where those gaps in infrastructure still are, where people don't have the connectivity to do their daily needs online, you know, whether it's meetings, whether it's school, whatever it might be. So asking folks to take a speed test and clearly identify those gaps so that when we are talking about funding decisions, that we have that ground truth data to understand where those gaps are and be able to communicate that with funders. And then also sort of on that utilization side, trying to understand how folks are using it today so we can start planning for the supports that are needed in our community to make sure they're being able to take advantage of that connectivity when it gets there. So This is my plug for the evening. We have been very fortunate to work with an incredible group of broadband action teams and other economic development districts around Oregon to support developing this Faster Internet Oregon campaign. It is a speed test platform that's going to allow us to collect data across the state. It'll be an input into the state's mapping efforts, as well as a great tool for us as we look at funding opportunities. You know, we supported QLife in submitting some applications last year, and one of the first questions we got back from the funders was, do you have some data to back up where these gaps are? Because I will tell you right now, the FCC data doesn't quite cover it. And, you know, we didn't have the data to back it up. And so we are really trying to do our homework this time to make sure that when that next round of funding comes out, we're able to really back up what we're telling folks about where those gaps are in our communities. So we've been working really hard to distribute that survey along with this broader survey that we developed with input from the broadband action team that's highlighting some of those other broadband needs. The link is here. We've have it online. We've been driving out, and a big thank you to Lee for taking a big road trip across the county as well on this front, but bringing paper surveys, paper flyers, little postcards out and distributing them around the county so that even folks that maybe don't have access to broadband at their homes can see where that survey is and try to provide that information. And so we're continuing to work with and coordinate with partners to try to get that out far and wide so that we're collecting that information that we need for resources down the pipeline. And this is just the slide with some of the promo materials we put together. I would encourage, if any of these look useful for your social media channels, for newsletters, for sharing with your networks, please do feel free to reach out and we can get the electronic copies. We're happy to deliver paper surveys anywhere that you all feel like would be valuable to getting the word out in the community here.
So one of the other things we want to share with you tonight is the Rural Innovation Strategies report that we just had presented at our last QLife meeting. This was a study and an advisory report that was funded by Google here locally through their Community Affairs Fund. We thank them. And again, trying to get ready for what's coming down the pike. We wanted to really find out, you know, how would we install a fiber optic network here? How would it work? Where would it go? So we'd be ready for that, in addition to having the data that Carrie just talked about. We want to have the tools ready and the partnerships ready. So this study just was shared, and you can see here what we're seeing in terms of the middle mile routes that would connect the hubs and towns of Wasco County. So the green line sort of shows how would we go and where would we go around the county to connect. And in addition, you know, hitting some of the more remote, smaller towns like Shaniko and Pine Hollow and Pine Grove. So this was really great information to have. There's going to be follow-up on this as well, but this is what we needed. And Celilo Village be connected, Mosier, and other points. Obviously, this would hit our major population centers. Those of us who don't live close to that route would still be out there. So I'm a Starlink user, and I'm probably going to remain a Starlink user because it's going to be too cost prohibitive to connect someone like me. But I also tethered to Verizon for a number of years, so there are some ways to go like that. And so the next steps on this, now that we've received this report, is we're going to be looking at target grant opportunities. We are, by the way, working with the in concert with the state broadband office. And oh, by the way, we're not the only county in the state doing a lot of this same work. So you look at Douglas County, you look at towns like Hermiston, other places, they're all talking, they have BATs and they're getting ready to go too, but we want to be really competitive. So as part of this, we're going to look at a rate framework evolution for Q Life overall, and discuss expansion opportunities with potential internet service provider partners. And there are a number of them we've been working with. And with that, just again, sort of tell you where we are, ready, set, Wi-Fi. Our vision, every address in Wasco County can enjoy a higher quality of life. The mission, the scalable telecommunication infrastructure we talked about, much like a public utility. We want to pursue funding and partnerships with others. And again, back to the BAT, the Broadband Action Team. Everybody's come in and they're ready to work together, and they've been really great, regardless of who they are. And again, if we could encourage your electorate, your citizens to take the speed test, that would be fantastic. With that, Q&A. Questions?
Any questions for Lee or Carrie? Or comments?
I would note the chair of Q Life, Commissioner Scott Higgy, is online and maybe has something to say.
Commissioner Hagee, welcome.
Former chair, but chair forever before he walked away.
He just turned.
I actually, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, Lee is the chair now, so he's doing an awesome job. I was going to comment on, we, in our strategic plan, we have a goal of having 150 megabytes per second up and down. And I just returned from meetings in Denver and met with a lot of federal folks back there. And I'm almost feeling like that needs to go up based on what I heard from federal folks, is that everybody's going to be moving that bar up a bit. So we'll see what happens. But if we get 150, that'd be great. But I think long-term, we're going to need more than that. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thanks
you.
very much,
Thank
Lee.
you.
Thank you, Carrie. Item 6 on the agenda is audience participation. During this portion of the meeting, anyone may speak on any subject which does not later appear on the agenda. Up to 5 minutes per person will be allowed. Citizens are encouraged to ask questions with the understanding that the city can either answer the question tonight or refer that question to the appropriate staff member, who will get back to you within a reasonable amount of time. If a response by the city is requested, the speaker will be referred to the city manager for further action. The issue may appear on a future meeting agenda for city council consideration. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the city council for up to 5 minutes on any subject which is not on the agenda? Anybody? Okay, last call. Thank you very much.
By the way, inside the room here, we are 81.61 Mbps. Whatever that means.
Thank you, Councilor Runyon.
Did the test.
Okay, item 7 is the city manager's report. Mr. Cleaves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few items for the council today, a couple of which I'm going to be looking for consensus or support on. The first of which is a memorandum of understanding with the Mid-Columbia Community Action Council, or MCAC, as part of their $1 million grant agreement with the state of Oregon to establish a coordinated homeless response system in partnership with the city of the Dalles, city of Hood River County, Wasco County, and Sherman County. This is related to HB 4123. And as I said, this MOU is part of the grant agreement that they have. They've already been awarded by the state. And the deadline for this agreement is July 31st. So my apologies for the quick turnaround, but we have the finally received the finalized, I should say, MOU not too long ago. As I said, this MOU is one of the requirements for the grant award, and it effectively establishes an Office of Housing Stabilization, along with a Housing Stabilization Advisory Board made up of councilors, commissioners, and the mayor from the respective organizations. And so Mayor Mays is listed as the member on that advisory board. There's no financial commitment. It's a commitment to support and cooperate in good faith over a 5-year period. And my intention was to move forward with that MOU to show that support for MCAC and fulfill their grant requirements, and wanted to bring that to the council for any questions and see if I can get your consensus on it.
Would the agreement call for, would we be authorizing the city manager to sign the agreement?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Klebs or comments?
No, we've discussed it in the past, I think, thoroughly here and there. Just finally getting the actual paperwork.
Am I to assume that the city manager has our consensus to move ahead with this MOU?
Yes.
Okay. You've got it.
Thank you very much. On this similar topic, I'd like to make note that MCAC has spun up and opened up their cooling shelters in partnership with St. Vincent de Paul, as well as the Medical Reserve Corps for the first time. So they have some volunteers helping them out with staffing of those cooling shelters for this particularly hot week. I also wanted to update the council on Mr. Day's short-term rental records, and I wanted to let you know I'm pleased to confirm that he's in full compliance with both the TRT and STR ordinances, and he's looking forward to working and maintaining a good relationship with the city moving forward. The other item I had for you, again, somewhat opportunity driven, is a Safe Routes to School grant application that the council may be aware of in partnership with D21, specifically for the Chenoweth Elementary School and two potential projects along 7th Street and 10th Street. As the council may be aware, the Safe Routes to School program can provide some grant funds to construct bike and pedestrian safety improvements, sidewalks, crosswalks, bike lanes, things like that. And so earlier this year, the city had submitted 2 applications, at least the part 1 for each of those applications, for improvements on 7th Street and 10th Street. And as I said, it's for sidewalks, marked crosswalks, curb extensions, lighting, and radar speed feedback signs. This initial part 1 was to provide an initial scoring on those applications. And we both scored, or both of those projects scored quite well and quite high. Moving forward, we would have to submit part 2 of the application, which has a cash match requirement. And this was not budgeted in the current funding cycle. The next window for a Safe Routes to School grant application is 2 years from now. And so the deadline for the part 2 of this grant application is July 31st, again, coming right up. So the potential grant award would be for $2 million and requires a 20% match. In other words, a $400,000 match. And staff has prioritized the 10th Street project over the 7th Street project. We'd want to move forward with one application. That project, with all the bells and whistles included in the original scope, was about $6.7 million. So we'd have to right size this project to bring it in line with the $2 million max grant award and the $400,000 match requirement. So a total of $2.4 million. As I said, the match was not budgeted in this fiscal year, but to take advantage of this opportunity, I'd be looking for support from the council to pledge to fund 50% of that match in partnership with D21, who would fund the other half of that match. So $200,000 a piece, in other words. Of course, that'd be contingent upon D21 committing the $200,000 and contingent upon us being able to right size the project to the maximum grant award, like I spoke of a moment ago. I had some correspondence with D21 last week that stated that they were in support of that. And if we are successful and are awarded the grant, I'd work with the finance director and staff to bring to bring that back to council to finalize and authorize that $200,000 cash match requirement. This would be a pledge or part of the application should we be awarded. The alternative is to let this opportunity go and not submit for this grant cycle and submit the project again a couple of years from now. And again, with that tight timeline, wanted to bring it up to the council for consensus to move forward.
Questions for Mr. Klebs?
I have a couple, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Richardson.
Thank you, Matthew. What a very rough approximate, please, distance for how big of a project or some other measurement of how big of a project this is in terms of, I don't know, linear distance of improvements. Are we talking half a mile? Are we talking 100 yards? What are we talking about?
So I think it was approximately, and I know that Dale McCabe is in the audience who may be able to help me with some of these figures, but I think it was approximately 2,200 feet of improvements as part of the application.
Dale, would you like to come forward? Thanks. Please introduce yourself.
Dale McCabe, city engineer for the Dalles. The overall project for 10th Street, when it was being looked at, the school district had received what was called the ODOT Safe Routes to School Project Identification Program a year ago. And so during that process, ODOT assigned a consultant to the school district, and I was working with the school district through that process. So Alta Planning was the assigned consultant that was assigned to the project. So through that process, we looked at a couple different projects, one on 10th Street and one on 7th Street. So 7th Street was going to be improving the walk of like sidewalks or a path from Hostetler Street to Snipe Street. 10th Street was looking from doing a sidewalk and bike lane, what would be the east side of the road or the north side, depending. So the riverside of 10th Street. And that was going from Snipes all the way to ultimately Foley Lakes. From the Chenoweth Creek Bridge to Foley Lakes is Wasco County. So that's not part of our jurisdiction. Ours would be from 10th Street to that Chenoweth Creek Bridge. The section on 10th Street between Hostetler Street and Chenoweth Loop Road would be just some minimal improvements, knowing that when the school district does their improvements at the Watonka campus and like a new high school there, they would have to be doing the ultimate curb, gutter, sidewalk, street improvements, drive approaches. So the work along that section would be a minimal improvement right now, like fixing the driveways and putting in just an asphalt walking path and making sure the bike lane was there. So the 2 million, we'd have to scale it down and we'd have to be deciding which one's going to be, are we starting from Hostetler working towards Snipes or some improvements on Chenoweth Loop Road right up to 10th Street and then ultimately going to Foley Lakes. We'll have to look at, what that $2.4 million would be able to get out of that $6.7 million ultimate project.
Well, it's always a great deal if we can get, $4 out of $5 paid for by the state for big infrastructure project. So that's always encouraging. But on the other hand, it's real money, 200,000 or 400,000, depending on how you look at it. When approximately do you suppose we'd be needing to spend the money? Would it be in the current budget cycle, or would it be next year, next fiscal year?
So the applications are due July 31st. We would find out in October or so if we were successful or not. Then in January, they will start putting together the memorandum of understanding with the successful grantee, and they would be finalized by April. So then is the time that I think you would have to come up with the match. You'd be given the grant monies, but you have 5 years to be able to construct the project.
You see us constructing the project in 2023? If we're approved?
I think it's going to be a lot of work to be able to get that all put together. But like I said, you would have up to 5 years to complete the project. It doesn't have to be in 2023.
Yeah.
So
Well-
if we commit, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So in other words, the commitment is under a very tight timeline, but the actual spending is 5 year. We have 5 year, almost 6 year window
Yeah, for the project
if
completion.
approved.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's fair to say there's several details that still have to be worked out. What you're asking for is authorization so we can get the grant in by July 31st.
Showing that we have the monies to provide the match for the grant if we're successful in getting it and moving forward with it.
Is there a plan for 7th Street? in the near future, or is that, we're not even thinking about that right now? We just want to get this one done first.
Well, like Matthew said, we applied for both of them through the part one application, and both of them showed that we ranked very, very high. There, I think overall for the part one application, there was like 84 or almost 90 applicants that put in the part one for the entire state. And both of our 7th Street and 10th Street were like in the top 10.
Oh,
Were saying they were good projects for this. So we could potentially look at, I mean, it's going to be tight because now it's already July 31st is when they're due and we're right up against it, but we could try to complete the part two for both of them, apply for both and see which one we get and which one we want to prioritize. The 7th Street one was cheaper than the 10th Street project. The 7th Street one basically had two estimates. One was putting sidewalk on one side. That project, I don't have it back there in the book, but it came in at like $3.3 million for the improvements from, like it said, Hostetler to Snipes, where they also had a second alternative, which was just widening out some of the shoulder, trying to take care of some of the right-of-way improvements and widen that out with a walking path, like an asphalt walking path for that distance. And that one, I believe, came in just under $1 million at 9.7 or something like that. Or 970,000 or somewhere along those lines. So we could potentially, look at doing a smaller scale project on 7th Street rather than tackling the big one on 10th too. They were both high priority projects. It's just the Alta planning, when they were looking at all of the information that they had compiled through that whole project identification program process, ranked 10th Street as the highest priority.
any other, Council Runyon?
So this is a competitive grant statewide. I'm
Yes.
assuming, do we have any feeling for where we stand with this kind of a project in relationship to the criteria?
Like I said, with the part one application that we put in, like the 10th Street one, it came back as number 2 out of the 84 applications that were submitted. And I believe 7th Street was like number 7 or 8 or something.
So we're in a reasonably high position. So looking at the timeline you mentioned of October, January, April, and we're starting to get close to the end of the current fiscal year at that point. Is there any feeling about when actual checks have to be written and so forth? Because I'd like to know from our finance department, if we had to write a $200,000 check in that fiscal year, could we do it as a place marker or whatever for the next fiscal year?
Yeah.
Have we had those discussions?
The monies have to be available, and as part of that time in April, when you're doing signing the memorandum of understanding and compiling that MOU.
Okay, well, without seeing the paperwork, there's
Right.
where
So
the availability is one thing. When do I have to actually give you the check?
So I've spoken with the finance director, and if we are awarded the grant, it'll come with a grant agreement. And we would process or go through any financial process that we need to go through to get that final authorization to have the match required along with D21 before executing that agreement. At this stage, what we're looking for is just to get our application in particular, because it ranks so highly, and take
Right.
advantage of this opportunity we have rather than letting it go, frankly, and reapplying for these projects 2 years from now.
No, I'm for it. I just think those are questions that need to be out there, and where it's going to come from and how. And hopefully it'll be closer to that next fiscal year than the current one.
Well, and depending on how the timeline of the grant works out and what may be required, that's where we would decide what financial process makes the most sense
Right.
to go through to allocate the funds.
Attorneys take a lot of time to get things back and forth, correct?
Which is pretty quick.
We may want him to slow down. All right, that's all I have.
So the staff is looking for council consensus to give our blessing toward submitting the application by the deadline with the understanding that there's a $200,000 price tag attached to our grant application
In partnership with D21.
and in partnership with D21, who would be coming up with the matching our 200,000. Counselor McLaughlin?
More questions. What impact would this project have on homeowners on 10th and 7th? And what are the costs and length of construction?
Well, as far as contributions from property owners, there's really not going to be any monetary contribution. It will impact their frontages, especially on 7th Street, if we were to look at that project. And so I guess that's a question that I would like to have answered. Are we just focusing on the 10th Street one, like was originally deemed the high priority project, and we'll wait for 7th Street like 2 years down the road, then we could apply for the 7th Street one later. But 7th Street will have some real big impacts to the property owners on there because of the narrow right of way, and there's a lot of vehicles that are doing on-street parking out there, and basically parking along their frontages. And so you're basically left with just 2 travel lanes. There's really that's one of the hazards out on 7th Street, is that there's no room for the kids to be walking. If you see them walking like early in the morning or in the afternoons after school, they're essentially walking right on the edge of the travel lane, because in a lot of places there's no place for them to walk. So that's going to create some big issues for on-street parking and being able to widen that out and put some improvements for a walking path. So that will have quite a big impact on some of those residences.
However, 10th Street has higher traffic patterns,
Yes.
faster.
Yep.
And I support the 10th Street as a priority.
I would think 7th Street too, with all the complications you just described, would take a certain amount of public outreach.
It
to
definitely,
contact the
it definitely
homeowners and-
would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 10th Street, I agree with Council McLaughlin. Any other discussion on this? We need a motion, or can we just,
No, I was just looking for consensus from the council to move forward on that grant application. Should we be awarded, we'll go through the appropriate process before executing that grant agreement.
can we
I'm in favor.
I'm in favor with 10th being the focus.
Yes, mine.
okay, anybody have a problem with giving the staff its consensus? Nope. Okay,
Just a couple more items for you. I wanted to mention that Josh Chandler is our interim community development director. Now that Alice Cannon has left. And so I wanted to thank Josh for stepping up and helping us in that department. And he's here with us this evening. Also want to let you know that I attended the Oregon City County Managers Association Conference last week with the Human Resource Director, Daniel Hunter. That has always been a good conference to go to in years past, and this year was no exception. And with that, that's my report.
thank you, Mr. Cleaves. City Council reports. We'll start with Council Runyon.
Nothing.
Councilor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Monday, the 18th, I attended the Dog River Pipeline groundbreaking event, which was an excellent event. A long time coming, and of course, obviously a big project for our community. I just want to extend my thanks to staff for seeing this project through, keeping the eye on the ball, and glad to be here and watch it get underway. On Tuesday, the 19th, I attended the Urban Renewal Agency Board meeting as a board member, and that's my report.
Thank you, Councilor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On July 18th, I also attended the groundbreaking for the Dog River Pipeline Upgrade Project and learned quite a bit about the history of the development of the city's water resources on that section of the Dog River. And yeah, thanks to Dave Anderson for making that happen. That's my report.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Well, on Tuesday, July 19th, I attended an airport commission meeting at 7 a.m. in the morning. There was also an urban renewal meeting that evening. On July 18th, I regret missing the Dog River excursion. My bad, but I did get my dirt. Thank you very much. And the 15th, we had a meeting, Mayor Mays and I, with developers of the Dallesport Airport development that's being planned. And that's my report.
Mr. Mayor. I do have something to add, though, actually.
Okay, how about we get to Counselor Long and I'll come back to
Oh.
you.
Forgot she's on TV. Yeah.
Counselor Long.
Thank you. So I also attended the July 18th Dog River Pipeline tour and groundbreaking. I was very happy for that opportunity. And on the 19th, we had the urban renewal meeting where we talked about the transition in staffing to Josh Chandler. And we also talked about some updates to our incentive program. We sent that back to staff and it should be coming back at our next meeting for final approval, I anticipate. If there's anyone in the public that has additional information that didn't get a chance to share that at the meeting because we didn't open it up to the public, I do encourage them to reach out to myself or to the community development department. And then the final thing that was pretty important, and it will be coming to City Council in September, but we had an update on the First Street project. And because of requirements working with ODOT and the federal grant funds that we previously had, we are recommending to the City Council that we do not go forward with using the federal grant and that we repay the portion that we've already used. And of course, there'll be a lot of details about that. But primarily it's because of the complications and this extension of the project, which would also seriously increase the overall cost of the project. And we would like to get First Street done. I also attended the Traffic Safety Committee on Wednesday, the 20th. And I attended a fundraiser for the Summer of Hope fundraiser for Safe Space Children's Advocacy Center. And I just wanted to bring that up, not because I attended the fundraiser, but because I recently learned that this advocacy center is the only nonprofit in the entire Columbia River Gorge that coordinates the efforts of providing a single point of contact for child abuse victims. That includes children from the Dalles. And it's physical, mental, and sexual abuse. And so this is a really important resource that serves the Dalles that I was not necessarily aware of. And I wanted to make the rest of the council aware and just let the council know that they might be coming to us asking for support. Unfortunately, because this is such a terrible, terrible thing, child abuse, they are not currently able to serve all of the children who are being abused. And this is like a one-stop shop where you get law enforcement and child protection staff and mental health experts under one roof. So the child only has to go through the interview process one time and everything is recorded and it's done in such a way that the information can be used in court, which has reduced the number of these cases that have actually had to go to court, which is of course much better for the children and their families and gives them a chance to start their healing process sooner. So I just wanted to bring that up and let you know that this might be something coming before the council because they are trying to expand both the building and the number of children that they're serving. And that's my report.
Thank you, Counselor. I might add that before we get it over to Counselor Runyon, I took a tour of that facility in Hood River about 6 months ago. I met with their executive director and the district attorney from Hood River. And I agree with you. It's a very worthwhile program. And I wish they had more resources to be able to serve their clients. Counselor Runyon.
Yeah, I've forgotten here. I really didn't have any meetings on behalf of the city other than some citizen things, which reminded me I wanted to put out a couple of very special thank yous tonight publicly. One for Alice Cannon, and I appreciate you just stepping up as you have, but Alice has just been a joy to work with as a counselor, to be able to call her and get immediate information or very close to immediacy. And she's just been a joy, and I'm glad we're going to be having a little bit of her help going forward as transitions happen, and that's good. And she moves on in her life. Just want to think she's been an excellent employee of the city of the Dalles. The other thank you I want to give to is Nikki Lesage. And I have been working on a couple of things. I've taken on the occasion of walking downtown a lot here lately since my last doctor report. And I was noticing a number of things, and Nikki has put out a campaign, and I've watched business after business out with their weed eaters, cleaning up the lengthy bushes here and there, right in our main downtown area. So, and that project's still underway. Some of them still have a ways to go, but kudos to her and keeping on top of that. And she got great response. So thank you, Nikki Lesage.
Thank you, Counselor. I attended also the Dog River Pipeline groundbreaking ceremony. I also gave a presentation to the Dalles Rotary on July 13th. I was on KODL coffee break on the 19th. And on July 21st, I took a tour of the Orchard View Farms, their facilities and operations, courtesy of Megan Thompson of Cascade Cherry Growers and Becky Bailey of Orchard Farms. It was a very enjoyable and educational tour of their facilities, which are amazing. I would encourage anybody to contact either one of those ladies and get a tour and see what the cherries operations is all about. They provide a great service for our community and obviously a major part of our local economy. Okay, with that, we'll move to item 9, the consent agenda. We only have one item on the consent agenda, and that's approving the minutes from the July 11th City Council meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor Mays, I'll, yes,
We'll
I
move
make a
to-
motion, yes, to approve the July 11th, 2022 regular city council meeting minutes.
Thank you, Counselor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Counselor McLaughlin and seconded by Counselor Richardson to approve the consent agenda in the minutes of July 11th. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Item 10A is consideration to award a contract for the Trevitt Street Utility Project. Mr. Anderson.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council. Forgive me, my voice is coming and going tonight. I must have used it too much on Monday, so I apologize if I spoke too much last week. So in late 2021, the Public Works Department requested bids for this same project, the Trevitt Street Utility Upgrade Phase 1 project. The scope of work for this project is to construct approximately 2,200 feet of sanitary sewer pipe, 4 inches to 10 inches in diameter, remove and abandon specified existing sanitary sewer pipe, and construct associated manholes and other appurtenances. All the bids from that solicitation were rejected because the responsive bids received substantially exceeded the funds that were budgeted for the project. Since then, staff increased the funding for the project with the preparation of the current fiscal year 2022-23 budget by about 36%, and we re-advertised the project for bid. This project, the Trevitt Street project in its entirety, is required to replace and upsize deteriorated and failing sanitary sewer mains, improve stormwater collection systems, eliminate some of the existing utility conflicts that have occurred between the sanitary sewer systems and the franchise utilities, and ultimately reconstruct the failing street services and replace non-ADA compliant sidewalk ramps. Projects planned to be completed in a number of phases over several years. And this phase 1 project was planned to replace and upgrade the sanitary sewer mains in and adjacent to Trevitt Street between West 9th and West 12th Street. At least one segment of these sewer lines are already experiencing significant failure, so there's some urgency to proceeding with the project. Ultimately, the additional phases will upgrade and correct utilities in Trevitt Street all the way up to 17th Street. And then again, as I mentioned before, once all the utility upgrading projects have been completed, The city can then issue a contract to rebuild and resurface Trevitt Street between 6th and 17th Street. This time around, we only received one bid for the project, and that was from Crestline Construction in an amount of $1,175,887. This amount falls actually between the two responsive bids that were previously received. It's significantly higher than their previous bid was by about 45%. And however, as I mentioned before, it's between the two bids that were previously received. While staff will be recommending award of this contract tonight, I want to be sure that council also has the option, since the funds exceed the amount of money that's actually budgeted for specifically for this project, the council could again reject all bids. And that would require a written finding that it's in the public interest to do so. That would be consistent with the local contract review board rules as we did previously. If that was council's desire, you could indicate your such and direct staff to bring back a resolution at a future meeting, which would reject all bids. With that, we have a total of $1,018,285 budgeted for the project in the Sewer Reserve Fund, Fund 56. The only bid that we received is $157,602 over that amount. However, Fund 56 also includes funding for other capital projects, and the award of this project could defer another one of those projects. However, we think that prioritization of this project is warranted because of the existing sewer failures that we're currently experiencing in some of the alleys that are part of this project. With use of some of the funds allocated to other as yet unbid projects, there are adequate funds available for this contract. Staff's recommendation is that the council move to authorize the city manager to enter into contract with Crestline Construction in an amount not to exceed $1,175,887 for contract number 2022-011, the Trevitt Street Utility Upgrades Phase 1 project.
Any questions or comments? One thing you just said that kind of confused me, we're doing Trevitt between 9th and 12th, but you said something about alleys.
So, and then we're doing the alleys and side streets adjacent to Trevitt in that same area.
Oh,
And it's in the alley, some of the alleys
Yeah.
that we're having the worst problems right now.
okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
That was from 6th to 17th Street, right?
It's for the current project, it's from 9th to 12th. Ultimately, the Trevitt Street project, all its phases together will cover from 6th to 17th Street, but that's several years down the road and 4 or 5 phases of work.
And in that is included resurfacing of that street.
The last phase will be the resurfacing and reconstruction of the street.
In favor.
Director Anderson, did you have any conversations with Crestline about the precipitous increase of their second bid?
We did not, and and the reason we didn't was because per our contract review board rules, we are not able to negotiate bid prices with responders. So I did check on that because I was tempted to.
Well, would your theory be everything is exploding in costs, especially with?
There's
construction?
certainly an inflation factor. Be really blunt, they also knew they were the only bidder. This contract required pre-qualification and only one bidder pre-qualified for the project.
And they knew that from the
From the
conferences and
pre-qualification
stuff, yeah.
process.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I motioned out.
I'll make
I
a
can make
motion
a
to
motion.
approve staff recommendation.
Okay, I think Counselor Long, would you settle for being second?
Oh, yeah.
Seconded.
I'll second that, yes.
It's been moved by Counselor Runyon and seconded by Counselor Long to accept the staff recommendation and award the contract to Crestline. Is there any more discussion?
Yes.
Counselor Runyon,
So even though this is higher than we had hoped and whatnot, it's still within the projected budget you have available to do the project.
By utilizing some funds that are currently out or would have been allocated to to other projects, which we haven't let to bid yet, and we haven't initiated contracting for, we can cover the overage. Yes.
We have to put something else on hold.
By putting something else on hold, and we'll see what the status of the fund actually is after the audit's complete. It's possible we may have more money in the fund than we're projected in the budget, and we could come to the council, reauthorize those additional funds for expenditure and still move forward with all of our projects. But our finance director doesn't like me to talk about those things until we get the audit done, so I didn't say anything.
Ms.
You throwing
Wilson,
something really heavy at me right now?
She'd already given you a nod.
Chew off.
was going to invite her up here for equal time, but.
All right.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
I just want to comment that, Mr. Mayor, if I may, that I'd be inclined to not support this were it not for the fact that it's a sewer system and it's having problems already and some failings that you said that does lend some urgency to it. So I against my first inclination will be supporting it.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
2B is awarding an engineering contract for the Sorosis Reservoir roof repair project. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you. During the recent project to repaint Sorosis and Columbia View reservoirs, we found, once we got into that Sorosis reservoir, that there had been a significant amount of deterioration and metal loss on many of the interior roof rafters and bolts due to corrosion, which has reduced the structural integrity of the tank. Sorosis reservoir was built in 1954. It was last repainted on the inside in 1964. And over the recent decades, we haven't had the ability to take that tank offline to do maintenance. It was too critical we didn't have a way to bypass the tank until we constructed the Vista Reservoir above the hospital in 2014. The addition of Vista, that gave us the ability to take Sorosis offline. We put together the project to repaint the interior. We found that all this metal loss and deterioration had occurred. Jacob Engineering had been the engineer who developed the specifications for the painting project. So the city selected to engage their services to develop a repair project, to design a repair project. Early in our work with Jacobs, who has a lot of familiarity with the city's water system, has done a lot of work for the city in the past, and has expertise in steel tank design and construction. But during our work with them, they identified early on that it would be desirable to have the tank inspected by an engineering firm, which actually specializes in repair and rehabilitation of steel reservoirs. They recommended Tank Industry Consultants that has that specialized engineering. After Tank Industry Consultants, Tank Industry Consultants, TIC, after they inspected the reservoir in April of 2002, city staff decided to discontinue the contract with Jacobs and pursue working just directly with TIC to design the needed repairs. The reason TIC was selected to perform the design and construction related engineering is because it's documented, because of the amount of documented specialized expertise they have to perform this engineering work. And they provided numerous references for similar work that they have performed comparable to our project. TIC was also recommended by Jacobs, who, as I mentioned previously, is a firm with extensive expertise themselves and has had a lot of familiarity with the city water system. TIC delivered a report to the city in May of 2002 following their inspection, where they provided two alternative set of recommendations, one which would extend the service life of the tank for another 25 years, and another alternative which would extend the life for another 50 years. They also mentioned that if the repairs were not completed within the next 24 months of the date of that report, that the tank should then be reevaluated and the recommendations may be adjusted accordingly. We met with TIC in June to discuss the findings. And from that meeting, staff recommended that TIC submit a proposal to provide engineering services to design the repairs and then perform the engineering services during construction, basically the inspections during construction. And we received that proposal in July 2022. Sorosis Reservoir can only be taken offline for maintenance during the winter months when water demands are low. The structure of the tank has been compromised and therefore is more vulnerable to failure, especially if there were to be a seismic event. Failure of the reservoir would interrupt water supplies to the city's customers, which could compromise public health and fire safety and cause significant property damage. And the city can best manage these risks by completing the needed repairs as soon as possible, which would be in the upcoming winter season. Now that the amount of damage to the reservoir known, staff believes that it would be inadvisable to delay repairs any longer than necessary. Therefore, staff recommended that engineering design work be undertaken as soon as possible to develop specifications that could be advertised for bid later this summer, with award of the construction contract to occur in the fall, and then the construction repair work to occur this winter. To stay on that schedule, there's not enough time to develop a competitive RFP for the engineering services and still complete the repairs this winter. The proposal that TIC provided identified a 25-year and a 50-year option, as I mentioned. With the completion of the design, the city would then advertise for a construction contract, which contractors would provide bids for both options, the 25 and the 50-year option. With that information, the city can then make a decision which is the most cost-effective option. For example, if it's X amount of dollars for the 25-year and twice that for the 50-year option, it's really a push which way you go. If however, the 25-year option costs a certain amount of money and the 50-year option only costs a third more than that, it may be and we could afford it, it may be determined to be cost effective, move forward with the longer term option. And having bidding the project both ways gives us the information to be able to make that analysis. For the 50-year option, it's anticipated that the project to complete the repairs, just as a construction piece, would probably take around 16 weeks, working 55-hour days. And the cost of the engineering services with TIC for the 50-year option is estimated to be $199,532. If the 25-year option were selected, the cost, engineering related costs, would be about $34,218 less. The city's local contract review board rules allow the city to contract directly with a firm for engineering services utilizing direct appointment without competitive bids or proposals when the city finds that an emergency exists. Staff recommends the direct appointment of a contract with TIC for engineering services related to the repair of Sorosis Reservoir roof system due to the vulnerability of Sorosis Reservoir to further damage or failure if repairs are not made, the criticality of the reservoir to the operation of the city water distribution system, which directly affects public health and safety, the potential for property damage if the reservoir were to fail, the need to perform repair during the winter months, and the need to minimize the risk to the city's water system public health by performing the needed repairs as soon as possible. The cost for the estimated cost for the required engineering services for this project using the 50-year option is $199,532. Within Fund 53, which is the Water Reserve Fund, we have budgeted a total of $600,000 for the engineering and repair. There are sufficient funds available for this engineering contract. And with that, staff recommends that the city council authorize the city manager to enter into an engineering and related services agreement with Tank Industry Consultants for the Sorosis Reservoir roof repair project in an amount estimated to be $199,532.
Any questions or comments?
Could we make a motion with a not to exceed number? Would that be unhelpful?
It would be probably inadvisable. The reason that it's worded the way that it is so much of the estimated costs are based upon the contractor schedule, which we don't yet know. Because the construction related engineering that's anticipated here anticipates having one of their inspectors on site full-time during the work. It could come in less than this number. It could come in a little more than this number. They have done their best to estimate it, and that's why we provided the information of estimating 16 weeks at 55 hours per week.
So there is a chance it could come in lower.
It could come in over.
Any other questions? Comments?
I guess my comment, Mr. Mayor, would just be that this is critical and obviously very time sensitive. And so we need to move forward on it. I mean, the alternative is completely unacceptable for the city.
Any other comments or questions? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to authorize the city manager to enter into an engineering and related services agreement with Tank Industry Consultants for the Sorosis Reservoir Roof Repair Project in an amount estimated to be $199,532.
Second that.
It's been moved by Councilor Randall and seconded by Councilor Long to authorize the city manager to enter into the agreement with TIC. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Mayor, may I say, in over 20 years of public service, I've never heard a department head use the word criticality. So that's why I voted yes.
First.
Thank you, David. Very thorough. Good job.
Item 11A is to consider a resolution adopting a continuity of operations plan for the city. Mr. Daniel Hunter.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of council. The continuity of operations plan can be viewed a little bit differently than the emergency operations plan. The emergency operations plan was adopted in 2013, and it's more of an outward looking document that the city, along with our partners, use to respond to emergencies. The continuity of operations plan is more of an inward looking document that tells city staff what we do in order to continue to operate in the event of an emergency, particularly if that emergency is affecting city staff, city facilities, city equipment, and our ability to continue to operate. And what we do if certain personnel are unable to report to work, who their second and third and sometimes fourth in line is, and how to contact them. This also applies to members of city council and the mayor in the event that members of council are unable to report for some reason to a meeting and we're unable to hold remote meetings. City council is through this process authorizing the mayor to act on their behalf in order to continue city operations during such an emergency. And just in case nobody is aware, I had to look it up myself because following the language in the emergency operations plan resolution and promulgation, I had no idea what promulgation was. And essentially it's adopting it as the official plan of the city.
So how would you compare promulgation with criticality?
That's very good.
Never mind.
I would just say that such words have come up in the past, and people are sometimes critical of that and call them made up words, at which point I point out to them that every word we have is made up. So.
Okay, very good answer. Okay, do we have any questions for Mr. Hunter?
I have a question, Mr. Hunter.
Counselor Richardson?
Thank you. I've seen a couple of places, for instance, on page 88 of the document, for example, that the clerk is essentially directed to arrange for an emergency city council meeting sort of as necessary. There's no sort of, seems a sort of lack of urgency with that. And I'm wondering if it's worth tweaking that language to say something maybe like holding a emergency city council meetings as soon as feasible, or it's feasible to gather a quorum or something, just so there's a little bit more. I know you don't need counselors in the midst of an emergency operations, but some of these scenarios like the pandemic are sort of maybe not as acute as like a chemical spill or something, where we could feasibly gather and be.
Sure, and I thank you for that. And I would just say that the reason that it's in there like that, and it may be just a confusion between the emergency operations plan and a continuity of operations plan. The purpose of this document isn't to direct staff and when they're going to or how they should be coordinating with city council to have official meetings. This is to ensure that should something happen, staff knows what to do in that event, and that we're not waiting around waiting for a city council meeting to determine whether or not we should do something. If a meeting is needed, then the city clerk will take the appropriate action to coordinate such a meeting. And so maybe that's.
For the clarification. Ising.
Counselor Runyon?
On page 43, orders of succession, well, we need some name updates here. Alice Cannon listed as key executive, first successor, Don Hurt. Those are the two that I see off the top there.
Yeah, so any of these appendices where personnel change, when they are changed, we can remove the appendices and put in new appendices that are have the updated names, as long as the substance of the document itself is not changing. This was submitted to city clerk for inclusion in the
I understand, but
council agenda. Well, at least one of these people is still employed here.
yeah, but it looks like a simple update and it's already occurred with those two people. So it might be wise to update the names before we approve this for another, how many years?
And then as time goes on, we'd be updating that sheet routinely.
Just that any name updates throughout the document that we update to current staff.
Did my mic? There it is. I would just say any of the changes in personnel that are changed, like this appendices, it's not changing the substance of the document. It wouldn't need council approval to change the name on it.
Good.
Okay.
Just pointing it out to fix it. Okay. Thank you.
Is my question. Any other questions or comments?
The other thing I would point out is the emergency operations plan in 2013 references this document, but it was not completed until now. So the one referenced in 2013 is the continuity of operations plan currently in process of being developed. So that's, Councilor Ryan, in part why I'm wanting to just get it done, and then we can change the appendices as needed, rather than putting it off further and bringing it back to council, at which
But
point.
as you said, name updates, et cetera, not part of approval, just a part of clerical work to get that done. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Mayor, I'll move to adopt City Council Resolution 22-027, a resolution promulgating and adopting a continuity of operation plan for the city of the Dalles.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Councilor McLaughlin and seconded by Councilor Randall to adopt the resolution for adopting a continuity of operations plan for the city. Is there any more discussion? In favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
McLaughlin.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hunter.
Thank you all.
Item 11B is to consider a resolution authorizing budget transfers. Ms. Wilson.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of council. You have before you my agenda staff report. It's for resolution number 22-28, authorizing transfers of budget amounts between various departments of the general fund of the City of the Dalles adopted budget, making appropriations and authorizing expenditures for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. Resolution number 22-28 transfers $120,908 from the contingency line item to cover the following items. $11,000 is needed from the contingency fund to compensate the planning department. And the purpose of this budget amendment is to allow for the expanded effort to complete the community visioning project. This includes extending the original project schedule until September or October in order to allow our community partners to be more involved in collaborating on the final community vision that has occurred in the past efforts. Item number 2 is $9,000 is needed to compensate the city council department for the safety line item. In the fiscal year 21-22 budget year, city council approved the police department to spend $18,500 in the safety line item for the body armor vest. Due to having to be fitted for new vests, there was a delay in ordering. The final order cannot be completed until this fiscal budget year of 2022-23. So we would like to be able to take the $9,000 to be spent in this budget year. And item number 3, on July 11th, the city council approved the lease with Harbor Tech Mobility in the amount of $129,007.58 for the new mobile computers for the police department. The lease was based over a 60-month term. Under the new GASB 87 standards, all the leases have to be recorded at the beginning of the term. The police department has budgeted $28,100 for this fiscal year of 22-23 and will need an additional $100,908 to be able to follow through with the purchase. Under the GASB 87 statements, a leasee is required to recognize the lease liability at the beginning. So coming into the budget year, our contingency is beginning with $950,493. And with these 3 changes, it would bring our contingency down to $829,585. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one, if I may. I did not follow what the last sentence was on item 3 under the GASB 87 statements, et cetera. What does that mean?
Under the new GASB 87 statements, we have to recognize the lease at the beginning of the term like a debt. And so we would recognize that whole asset and then it would fall onto our balance sheet also. And so this is a new accounting principle rule that is being required not only for purchases, but also for receivables.
Thank you.
Maybe a short explanation as to who GASB is would be in order.
So GASB 87 is who we keep in compliance with for all of our accounting rules. It's kind of like the law and we follow those. And when we're doing our audit, that's how we're audited, is regarding making sure that we're following the GASB 87 rules.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion, sir. Move to adopt resolution number 22-028, authorizing transfers of budgeted amounts between categories of various funds of the City of the Dalles budget, making appropriations and authorizing expenditures for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023.
Is there a second?
McLaughlin will second.
It's been moved by Councilor Runyon and seconded by Councilor McLaughlin to adopt resolution 22-028, authorizing budget transfers. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you.
Item 11C, consider an ordinance accepting real property for public right-of-way purposes. Mr. Kara.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mays. On June 7th, 2018, our Community Development Department issued its Notice of Administrative Decision for subdivision application number 71-18, which was a conditional approval of the Whispering Pines Estates application to develop some single-family residential lots. One of the conditions of that conditional approval was that the developer provide the city with the fee title to a parcel not less than 54 feet in width. And it's indicated in the packet as lot 26 on the plat that I have attached to the staff report. It is addressed near the 2400 block of West 14th Street. And the tax lot information is also included here in this packet in both the deed and in the special ordinance and in the agenda staff report. And so very, very commonly what you'll find when the planning department issues similar types of approvals is that those approvals are conditioned on certain development concessions by the developer. In this case, developing these single family residential lots required a dedication of right of way for street connectivity purposes. And commonly, what you'll see happen regularly throughout jurisdictions throughout the state and the country is that a developer will simply dedicate, which is just a giving away of their own land for use by the public, and that usually takes the form of an easement. In this case, it appears based off of my review of the Notice of Administrative Decision, staff negotiated a separate agreement where instead of the developer providing the city with this easement over private land, they're instead offering, and the city negotiated this, to simply give us the land in fee. And so really the only difference for the city in either accepting an easement over private property or accepting the private property is what happens if the city no longer wants it. And so if the land was dedicated to the city, the opposite of dedication in public law is known as vacation. And pursuant to our own code and under Oregon law, if the city no longer wants a portion of land that's been dedicated to us in the form of an easement, the method that the city would use to implement getting rid of it would be vacation. And the ultimate result of vacation down the line is that title to the land vests back in the adjacent property owners. In this case, it's a little unique, but it's worth noting that instead of going through that process, the city's negotiated, or staff negotiated at least, to condition this subdivision approval, we would simply accept fee title to this parcel, which has impacts on if the city decides it no longer wants it in the future. In this case, if the city has, in the next 10 years, before January 15th, 2030, if the city council decides that it no longer wants this property for right-of-way and street uses, title would go back to the developer. And so I can put it another way, and this is what I wrote in my staff report: so long as council does not make an affirmative action before January 15th, 2030, that the city doesn't want this piece of land to use for right-of-way, it's ours forever. But if the council decides, on January 14th, 2030, that, we don't really need this lot, then it can go back to the developer. And that's really the only difference here, and why this is coming from me and not from staff, which could have handled this no problem. And so I also included in here some mention of tax payments and delinquencies. And I've confirmed with our planning staff and with the county assessor that all delinquencies in property taxes have been paid on this parcel. And so with that, it's my recommendation that this council move to adopt the attached special ordinance number 22-594, a special ordinance accepting real property near the 2400 block of West 14th Street for public right-of-way purposes. I've attached a draft of the special ordinance, which the city clerk sent out in advance of this agenda, so it can be adopted by title only. And I've also attached my draft deed of dedication, which I plan on filing with the Wasco County Clerk if you all approve this special ordinance here tonight.
Any questions for Mr. Kara? Anybody like to make a motion?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I have one brief question and then I'd be happy to make a motion as well. Jonathan, I'm looking for like a yes, no, or we'll think about it sort of answer.
Got it.
Will you, or have you, or do you foresee advising city staff to negotiate in like circumstances, the same process where city would get fee title to parcels rather than easement access?
You mean generally?
Yeah.
Probably not, just because it's more work for me. It's a lot easier just to accept a dedication. But functionally, it's the same thing. It's functionally the same thing. Once land is dedicated for use by the public as right of way, the city maintains full regulatory control and exercises complete jurisdiction over it. Doesn't matter if we accept it by fee, doesn't matter if we accept an easement over it. The end result is the same. So not generally, no.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to adopt special ordinance number 22-594, a special ordinance accepting real property near the 2400 block of West 14th Street for public right-of-way purposes.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Counselor Richardson and seconded by Counselor Randall to adopt the ordinance accepting real property for public right-of-way purposes. Is there any more discussion or questions? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion, any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Mr. Kara. Item 11D, discussion of the League of Oregon Cities legislative priorities. Mr. Klebs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included in your packet is a brief staff report. Each year, the League of Oregon Cities provides a ballot to cities in Oregon to identify their top issues for the upcoming legislative session. This year, they've asked for our top 5. And as previous years, we've had some conversation with staff at the leadership team to review the different priorities to help start your conversation. So included in your staff report are the 5 bullet points that bubbled up through our conversation. The city council has the final decision on which ones to submit. So we'd be looking for your direction tonight on which 5 you'd like to do so. The 5 that we have listed is local funding to address homelessness, infrastructure funding to support needed housing, economic development incentives, transportation safety enhancement, infrastructure financing, and resilience. If you'll note on the ballot on the subsequent pages, you'll see at the bottom that there's some opportunity for some additional comment in addition to selecting the 5 top priorities. And so some of the comments that we received in through our process was wildfire planning, the impacts of Measure 110, civil commitment reform, and again, resources to address homelessness and transportation safety improvements as well. And so wanted to present that to you as kind of a primer for your conversation. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I brought the league's handy reference sheet for all these different priorities. It's about 10 pages or so. So I wanted to have that handy and would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for our city manager? Councilor Runyon.
As they stand, I don't really have a problem with any of the five. However, I would, if these are in order, I would change them. Number one for me would be economic development incentives. Second one would be transportation safety enhancement. Third, infrastructure financing and resilience. Fourth would be infrastructure funding to support needed housing. And fifth would be local funding to address homelessness. I don't believe that last one is our priority at this time in the city. It is a need, but not a priority.
Were those meant to be prioritized in the order they're listed? Or
No, they are not meant to be prioritized in the order that they are listed. The
I was
ballot-
unsure of that, but I just want to make sure that's my feeling.
Excellent distinction to make. Thank you for that. The ballot that's included is actually a fillable PDF. So what would happen next to each of those check boxes, a check would go in it, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example, but it's a good question. Thank you.
any other questions or comments? I was looking for, I'm sorry, go ahead,
No,
Counselor.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I was just looking for some clarification on number 1 and number 5 and number 7. What is state land use initiatives? Could you be a little more specific, what that would entail?
So state land use initiatives, and again, as described in the league's packet here, which was the link included in the ballot, which was included in your packet. But this is in regards to state rulemaking and some of the changes that they may mandate or require of us and the burden that it may place on cities, both in terms of just the general cost of incorporating those changes or fulfilling them, as well as the staff resources needed to do so. So in order for us to maintain alignment for some of these state land use initiatives, the league's supportive of bringing some resources along with it.
How about number 5? Protecting public employees and officials.
Yes.
Does that have anything to do with insurance?
The protecting public employees and officials has more to do with personal contact information, home addresses and cell phone numbers and things of that like, especially with some of the increase in threats or harassment or property damage that may occur. That's where that one stems from.
And number 7, attorney-client privilege.
Yes, that one has to do with recent court rulings that limit public sector attorney-client privilege to 25 years versus, if I understand it, every other type of legal counsel where attorney-client privilege lasts indefinitely. And so that places that limit to 25 years.
Counselor Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question actually for
Still going. My computer's overheating.
Public Works staff, please. I would certainly place number 27 high on our list, except that I think we've already, and which is water resource planning. But my sense is we already have that in hand with the water master plan. Is that fair? Or accurate, I should say.
Councilor Richard, I don't have the list in front of me. My recollection is that that is more focused on a statewide effort to do basin planning for water management rather than utility by utility planning. Matthew, does it read?
Yeah, so it states that funding needed to complete existing place-based planning efforts across the state and identify funding to continue the program for communities that require this support.
So the place-based, and thank you for that reminder, the place-based planning does have some local elements to it. Getting an echo. But I think we don't have an immediate need of those type of funds.
That was really my question. And then just underlining my my understanding or belief that hope that we are actually doing local water resource planning more or less as we speak, that
Yes, so
we can let
that
that one
is
go.
for
We can
on the local level, the way we do that is through our water master plan.
Yep.
And the RFP to the request for proposals to update our water master plan is we just opened them last Thursday. So we are currently in the process of evaluating the 3 proposals we received. We're planning to bring that to the council on September 12th.
Thank you very much.
Counselor Runyon.
No, Counselor Long, I think I saw a hand up there. No.
Counselor Long, did you have a comment or question?
No, I'm sorry if I raised the hand. I didn't mean to. My computer is starting to overheat, so I was trying to move it around to cool it off.
Part.
So I do have something. So Matthew, are you looking for us, just to clarify here, that we should just all fill this out individually, or are we looking for a city list to go forward?
I would like your direction on which 5 priorities the council would like to identify. And if you have any particular written comments you would like me to include at the bottom of the ballot, or primarily those top 5.
So I did go through them all and I liked your list, as I said, but I would just change the order to what I suggested. And if anybody else agrees, fine. If not, it'll be whatever, but I just don't think the homelessness one should be first.
Well, I'm glad we're not having to rank them because I would disagree with that, but since we don't have to.
Very okay.
I would just like to offer that I'm not sure, I support what the staff did. I think they're 5 very needed things. I'm just really concerned about property tax reform number 13. I think Oregon's property tax system needs a lot of work. And I've been part of a task force in my previous life to try to do something about it. And the way we assess property taxes in this state is just so bad. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm not saying that we should substitute number 13 for any of the other 5, but I just want to point that out.
I have concerns like you that when it goes to the legislature anyway, are they going to listen to us or are they going to make up their own minds when it gets there anyhow? It's nice of the League of Oregon Cities to present it, but like so many things, it's political.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Long.
so as far as that goes, this is the League of Oregon Cities asking what priorities they're that they should lobby for, the lobbyist that represents the League of Oregon Cities. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, that it's political, but it's that these will be the issues that the lobbyists will take forward and press really hard for us.
Of course, we'll get to see what the, I suspect they're asking all cities for their opinion on this, and we'll be able to see exactly what the other cities have said as well as us. Councilor McLaughlin.
I support all of the 5 issues that you recognize or the staff has recognized. But there's one thing that has developed since the pandemic started, and that is changes in criminality in our community and in our state. And I've noticed that the legislature has enacted laws that in many cases hampered law enforcement from doing their duty and protecting the citizens. So I would say that addressing some of these issues and maybe turning some of those back as we come out of the pandemic in order to make our communities more safe. If you look at the newspaper and see all of the reoccurring offenses that are cite and release, that tends to be a problem for me, is that we're not holding people accountable. So there's a repetitive nature of people continuing to do bad things. And we're not addressing those within our state nor in our community. At least I think that would be a priority that we need to examine, or at least bring to the League of Oregon City as a possible item.
Good point, Tim. Very good point. It's not on the list anywhere. You know, I'm glad you saw that and pointed that out.
Whatever, if you look at the newspapers, the news articles coming out of not only our community, but Portland and other communities in the state, crime is on a rise. And we haven't, I don't think, addressed many of those items and given the ample support to our law enforcement that I think they deserve.
I don't disagree either. I don't think there's nothing on the ballot as it is but there is a write-in option. So we could, in my mind, we could submit the 5 that the staff has recommended and then write in the issue that Council McLaughlin has raised.
What is infrastructure financing and resilience?
That's, I would think, would be funding for infrastructure improvements to the city.
Well, I support those, of course.
Mr. Mayor, I was going to say something fairly similar to Councilor McLaughlin. I wonder if we could ask staff, direct staff to write in something to the effect that we want to see the state take more seriously, not just cities, local governments trying to address some issues, but the state itself making really serious, substantial efforts at addressing drug addiction, which we have seen effects of in our town. I'm sure every city has, and mental health, which suffers from a lack of sort of support for people in various needs. And I think we also see some problems that stem from that.
Well done.
Disagree with that either.
Yeah. Somewhere down the line, we have to address the mental health issue. People standing on the street yelling at cars and that's on a rise. I've noticed in the past months that those occurrences are happening all over our town, and it's leaving them out without any hope is not humane, and leaving a person without having any, I know that they fall into homelessness, but just some time that we need to recognize and actually working together to bring all of the agencies together. I think we need to do a better job. That's not a legislative, that's not necessarily a League of Oregon Cities, but it's something that we as a city need to focus on.
But to Councilor Richardson's point, the state needs to take a more active role in all of those areas. The things that they shoved over to the county and the cities many decades ago now need to be reversed, and they need to be active.
Yeah, I think we need pushback. Defund the police was, in my opinion, was a mistake, and it was the wrong direction. And what we are seeing is a result of some of those actions. However, those courses are changing in many of the metropolitan areas. They're now coming back and seeing that it's affecting people's lives. And so what they're doing is they're enacting changes in path. What we need to do is be a little bit on the forefront of that and try. I know we've done a good job in our city of supporting our police department financially and morally and emotionally. And I know that things are on a rise. I know that we're getting more officers on staff. I just didn't want to miss an opportunity to talk about this issue. And it's important to me and to people that I know in our community.
Well, it seems to me we have 5 recommendations from the staff on this. The question I would have for you is, do we want to substitute one of the 2 issues that have been brought up concerning the criminal situation? And I see the drug addiction and mental health is separate. Do we want to substitute one of those 2 for one of the 5? And if so, which one? Or do we want to just add it as a write-in option in addition to the 5?
I'd suggested adding it as a write-in, Mr. Mayor.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, they're not on the ballot that they've already determined, so they would be optional write-ins.
I can't see any one of these items as being, they're all important. It's just, this is in addition to.
Okay, Mr. Klebs, you feel you have direction from the staff, from the city council on this issue?
Yes, the direction to keep the 5 that staff had identified in the staff report and add some write-in verbiage about addiction and mental health, as well as increasing crime.
Right. Thank you very much. Good discussion. Any other comments before we move on to the next item?
No.
Okay, item 12A is a discussion of the Community Vision Town Hall and the survey results. Mr. Cleaves.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I believe Aubrey is on all virtually, and she's going to take over here in a moment for a presentation. As the council, I'm sure recalls, this is part of the Vision 2040 project updates and next steps. We touched upon this just a few moments ago with the budget resolution presented by our finance director. Aubrey's going to give us an update on the status to date, talk a little bit about next steps, and then I can help fill in any gaps or answer any questions that you may have. But more specifically, the proposed next steps or the expansion to this scope of work is to permit a little bit more time and effort in coordinating and communicating with our key partners and stakeholders to have some outreach to them about the results of this process and to include them in the conversation in identifying what kind of strategies or objectives we may set. We are a partner organization. We're all here part of this community. And if we're going to set an objective or identify a strategy that we need to implement, we are likely going to need partners along with us. And so including them in that process, I think, is very important and critical in ensuring that the results of the Vision Action Plan are something that we can use and we'll see some forward action on. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Aubrey, and hopefully Izetta has given her the power of presentation.
Yes, I'm gonna bring up some slides right now and just want to say thanks for that introduction. Let's see here, make sure I'm showing the right screen. Let me know if that presentation isn't coming through. Hopefully it is. So I'm Aubrey Koenig with Barney and Worth. I had a chance to see some of you in person last Monday for the Dog River groundbreaking, also working on the outreach for that effort with Dave Anderson and his team. So that was fun. We got a lot of group photos that you guys will probably see yourselves smiling under hats and with shovels and some of the outreach materials moving forward. But I have a few slides to walk through the community visioning work. And Alice Cannon, of course, who was mentioned earlier, has been a key person in this work. Just as a brief reminder here, we started this, we kicked it off with Julie and Alice last fall with some outreach and collecting initial ideas around the visioning work. It's kind of in 3 phases here. So came back before council and provided some highlights from that first round of engagement in, I think, February. And then we had a virtual town hall and a online community survey where we gathered input to help refine and prioritize those initial vision ideas. And we're going to share some of the highlights from that this evening in the slides. And then looking forward, where we're headed is to develop that actionable path forward. And that's where we've refined the plan with Matthew's help and want to spend some more time to really make have some clear actions and some good alignment around partners. So it's more than city, but it's community led. So thinking back to spring, I know it feels like yesterday and ages ago at the same time. We did some various things to get the word out and invite people to participate in the town hall and the survey. Had support from your local media partners to share that announcement, put out in English and Spanish some advertisements through your webpage and social media feeds. And Alice had also developed a really nice MailChimp email list. So we got the word out through all of those formats. In terms of who we heard from, I just wanted to share a few of the kind of a slice of the demographic data. So from our town hall participants, we did a little live polling during that virtual Zoom event. And 44% of the folks who clicked the button on that poll had been in the Dalles for 10+ years. About 40% had been in the Dalles for 1 to 10 years. And 3 residents wrote in that they had been in the Dalles for more than 50+ years. So I think they walked away with the trophy for sure. In terms of our, in terms of our online survey participation, we had 53% who noted that they live in the Dalles, another 53% who said they work in the Dalles as well, and about 36% who responded to the survey who own a local business. So just wanted to share some of that, the demographics of who was engaged throughout these 2 stages of community engagement. So the community town hall, I want to say we had about 170 some registrants to the events, but 138 who attended and another 30 or so who watched the videos that are available online right now. That was both in English and Spanish. And that was an opportunity for community members to hear highlights from initial community input, to participate in city-led breakout room discussions, or we used a mural board to capture notes. I said city-led here, but actually a number of we had a lot of volunteers to facilitate those breakout discussions. And I know that was a really important part of the community town hall that evening. And also to help refine and prioritize initial visioning ideas. So that was the town hall, followed shortly by the community survey in April, also available in English and Spanish. 601 survey responses in total. I think 9 of those were to the Spanish version of the survey. Again, an opportunity for community members to share their views on the visioning focus areas, to weigh in on potential priorities for 2040, and to enter to win a prize. So we had a prize winner for each of the 2 online surveys. And just a note here, we asked folks along the way what makes the Dalles special in their mind, and beautiful location and rural small town feel are the things that come up again and again as essential parts of the character of the Dalles. We also asked during the town hall what community members, what their goals were for the visioning effort. And I just wanted to share a couple of the fragmented quotes here from community members. Of course, we had our goals walking into the visioning effort, but it's good to hear what is on people's minds, what they'd like to see as an outcome from this work as well. So actionable ideas that help guide the city and community, and meaningful work that improves our quality of life. Really powerful statement. Maintaining our identity while striving for progressive, positive change. So that sense of not losing what's true already, but also moving forward. Vibrant downtown, commercial, recreational, social hub of the Columbia Gorge. So kind of harkening back to what makes the Dalles special on the prior slide, thinking about that beautiful area and small town feel. And then the last one, getting into some of the key pieces here, more affordable housing options, updated school infrastructure, an updated tourist draw downtown, and a multi-generational community center. So those are a few of the goals that came up from community members. In terms of focus areas, the 2 that are larger, the 2 icons that are larger on the left of the screen, enhancing education and creating an economic vitality, those were the top mentioned focus areas, the things that really rose to the top for community members. And that's both in the town hall and in the survey. Additional focus areas include the providing recreation and open space, strengthening and sustaining community life, and improving governance and infrastructure. And we're going to walk through each of those briefly here. So in terms of education, we asked folks, what's most important, and have a few notes here that were reflected in the mural board, those breakout discussions that folks had. So investing in modernizing school facilities, developing youth activity programs are 2 of the things that's on folks' mind when they think about education as a key focus area for 2040. Also pulled a few representative quotes here. So, why is it important? People are considering how it ties into not just, feeling good and learning and stretching ourselves, but also how it ties into economic stimulus, sorry, a little bit of an echo, I apologize. It's a way to recruit young professionals, a way to keep folks, to bring folks back to the community and to keep them around when you're supporting your youth. In terms of that second focus area, the economic vitality, people noted in terms of what's most important, affordable housing opportunities, thinking about a variety of ways to create mixed use development to revitalize the downtown core. That shows up in a few different ways, and then helping small businesses succeed. And why is that important? It's a way to attract and retain employees, build that sense of community, and need long-term planning to attract visitors and grow businesses. Moving into the third focus area. So again, education and economy were really at the top. This is kind of the second tier of focus area priorities. So in terms of providing recreation and open space, one of the things that came forward is that parks are tied into equity. In terms of having those natural spaces that people can get to easily, there's few barriers to enjoy that time outdoors. That was on a lot of people's minds. And then also, of course, safe and well-maintained trails and paths. So ways to connect the community and to get between the places that you guys all enjoy that are part of the Dalles. In terms of strengthening and sustaining community life, family-friendly events and thinking about that downtown and the historic nature of it were on people's minds. Building a place of community for people of all ages and bringing people together are things that came forward quite a bit. And that's both in sort of physical spaces as well as event programming with a high focus on family-friendly, so multi-generational, bringing people together. The last one, improving governance and infrastructure. In terms of what's most important, I had some input on the projects like the hospital campus and athletic complex, and also long-range strategies for diverse retail and housing. And then this quote at the end, working together and making a team effort is important. We're too small to do it alone. This is really at the heart of why we've refined and extended that partnering phase that we're looking at moving forward to create an actual roadmap, is because of that idea, that feedback that we received around how important sort of the Team Dalles concept is to being able to make this visioning work successful. So what did we have in mind in terms of that actual roadmap development? Thinking forward to kind of this summer, we're starting in July, I guess. We want to have a work session with key partner organizations. And the idea there is to share some of these priorities identified through community engagement, a bit more detail, identify relevant initiatives and potential new projects that those organizations may themselves be working on, create that alignment, and then use that information to refine the list of actions to include in the vision plan. So working together to kind of co-create a bit more detail in that plan and make sure that we are not recreating the wheel, but we're powering forward with all the many things you guys have underway. And this is the last slide. So upcoming milestones, we're envisioning this partner work session, which will work to get scheduled soon. And then editing the vision plan to include near and middle term actions based on the outcomes of that discussion. And then moving forward with a final vision plan that would be, of course, reviewed and hopefully adopted by council in early fall. And that is the last of my slides.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Aubrey? Or for the staff? Go ahead, Councilor Richardson.
Thank you. Briefly, do we have that partner work session scheduled yet? Do you know?
No, we do not. It's not scheduled as of yet, pending action tonight to move forward with the consultants and have the funding available to do so.
I think you already got the money out of it.
Oh, tonight? Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Got the money.
Between now and then, I haven't.
You have
scheduled
not
it yet,
done
no.
anything in the last 20 minutes on that. I'm
No, not quite.
a little disturbed. Thank you. And the other point I would also have for staff is consider bringing this to council as a discussion item rather than an action item at first, if that's appropriate, because I feel like there's probably going to be good discussion and review and thoughts and edits that go round and round about that.
Well, following up on what Councilor Richardson just brought up, I saw words in here like summer and have it done or getting into the fall. We don't presently have any meetings scheduled for August. So if we're looking at September, is that the recommendation, is that we have this work session in September? With I'm talking about the work session with our partners, right? That's what we're looking
Right,
for.
that'll be our
Right, so-
near-term step. But sorry, Matthew, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no worries, no worries. One of the challenges there will be to find a suitable time with everybody's calendars to get the highest rate of participation we can with our particular partners. Knowing that City Council supports this additional phase or this expanded scope of the project, along with the resources to do so. Aubrey and I will be touching base quite soon after this to work that forward. I imagine possibly one or maybe a couple doodle polls may help in identifying the earliest dates where the highest number of participants who could come would be, and move that forward just as quickly as we can.
Were you anticipating that our partners would include all the board members and their, say, their CEO, or just one representative from each, like we did with the Google meetings, or how did?
In my mind, certainly one or two representatives from each entity, in a work session, everybody brought their full board. You'd have to find another venue outside of city council chambers to fit that many people. And so would imagine, or I would expect, the CEO, the executive director of respective organizations, and maybe a representative from a council or commission or whatnot would be our intention.
Okay. One other thing I had on the staff report, at least when we were discussing the budget amendments, the $11,000 alluded to the additional work because of the connecting with the partners, and the staff report here alludes to the robust public participation. Was it was the $11,000 a combination of both those factors?
So the additional contract, or the addition to the original contract that we'll have with Aubrey, is to facilitate this meeting with, or assist in facilitating this meeting with our partners, helping to organize it, and then taking their additional feedback and input and using that to create the draft vision action plan and its and then finally its final vision action plan to be brought back to council, now likely as a discussion item first and then an action item afterwards for adoption. Aubrey, did you have anything you wanted to add there?
No, I think that sums it up well. We're excited to kind of make that modification. I think, one of the things that we've been an interesting time. We started out, this process in fall, had ideas about how we wanted to move forward with engagement, made some adjustments to due to kind of pandemic safety concerns. Still got a really robust response, and we're able to implement some of the Spanish translation through the engagement process too. So we've been making modifications all along, and I think staying nimble here on that trajectory and spending a bit more time with the partners, which is really something we've heard through the community engagement too. That power of working together will make this a more usable plan for you guys as you move forward.
I think it'll be an important process and step to communicate with our partners to learn more about what their initiatives are currently underway, or they may already be considering in their own individual strategic plans. We saw Q Life's tonight, for example. And so having that conversation about their own strategies and objectives, what they're working on already, what they might be considering, would allow us to identify those opportunities for partnership, as well as avoiding duplication of efforts. Hey, we did that 2 years ago, this worked and this didn't work. Let's learn from one another and let's work together. And so I think it's an important step and an important effort to make to increase the chances and to have a product, a vision action plan that we are referring back to consistently, that is able to be used and implemented, and allocate our resources accordingly to see some of that movement going forward.
So from here, the staff is going to be connecting with our partners to finalize a date for this work session. And you're asking for the council's blessing to proceed in that manner. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yes, I wanted to have this discussion and hear any questions that you may have or any input in moving forward. I have the contract amendment with Aubrey for this additional scope of work that I'll execute now that I have the budgetary authority to do so. And that would be one of the next steps, would be to get that meeting scheduled on the books.
Clarification. Listening to the report, partner meetings, whatnot, did you mean to have city council involved with those partner meetings, or are you looking for them to come together and do some things and bring that to us?
So in a work session that I envision would be to have, myself and maybe a representative from the council or another member of our staff, not the entire council. No.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Well, before we leave the subject, I appreciate all the effort going into this because it gives us a plan, a direction for our city to go. What it also does, it affirms what we are doing really well. As I look through and looking at Parks and Rec, as I travel through Sorosis, it's amazing how much that's used on any night, any day. And it's really the park, the maintenance is doing a magnificent job. If you go to the library, it's filled minus the pandemic, but it's always active. There's things happening there. I mean, you know, we're doing really great things in our city. Yes, we can do some other things to improve. For example, we need to keep our rents and our homes affordable to the best of our ability. We need to make our city safe so that citizens can feel they are protected. Make sure our city is clean, well-kept, and beautiful, and we're doing that with your efforts, Mayor, thank you. And a lot of people combining and getting involved and promote economic growth and development. Sometimes when we look at perceptions, they do become reality. And from what I've learned in the last 10 years, well, I'm going on 50 years in the Dalles now. And what I've learned is that perception is reality. And there are great things that are going to happen to our city in the next years. I know it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments or questions? Am I to assume that that staff has the council's blessing to proceed as described?
Yes.
Okay.
Nicely done, by the way.
Okay, anything else on this item? Is there any other business to come before the city council? Looks like this meeting lasted 2 hours and 15 minutes longer than the last one. So I think we got our money's worth. Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned.
Finish this adjournment in the face of criticality.
What?
I was going to say it's important that we promulgate this
Yes.
so that we can
Record.